Many women believe that having a man means when he is physically present, replies to messages, says I love you, or shares his time. Yet in reality, the deepest connection is invisible. You feel it. Carl Jung said that true bonds do not arise on the surface of desire, but in the roots of the unconscious. That is why there are loves that survive without contact and relationships that die, even though they are together every day. To have a man does not mean to possess him, but to live in his mind, in his emotional memory, in the part of his soul that cannot detach from you, even if he tries. When a man is emotionally attached, he does not need to see you, to think of you. Your presence becomes a symbol, an energy that accompanies, inspires, and at the same time, disturbs him. And the amazing thing is that this connection does not arise from what you do, but from who you are. When you stop seeking his validation, the moment a woman stops wanting to please, her energy changes. She no longer emits neediness, but begins to radiate authenticity. On a psychological level, this awakens in the man an ancient impulse for connection. He no longer sees just a woman, but a mirror of what his soul seeks to understand. Jung explained it masterfully. Love does not happen between two personalities, but between two unconscious minds that recognize each other. When a woman reaches this silent resonance, she becomes unforgettable. Not because of her appearance or words, but because she has touched a part of him that he did not even know existed. Then come confusion, fear, desire, and contradiction. But it's too late. The connection has been created. At that moment, you truly have him. Not because he is with you, but because his unconscious seeks you, even in your absence, because something in your being has entered his mind and refuses to disappear. And even if he denies it, distracts himself, or tries to rationalize it, part of him always returns to you. That is the silent power of psychological love. It is not conquered through effort, but through energy. It is not held by words, but by presence. And once it is born, his mind, bodies, and soul fall into a cycle of attachment he can no longer control. So before you try to have him, ask yourself if you are truly vibrating from your essence or from the fear of losing him. Because when you live from your center, there is nothing to prove. You naturally attract him and have him without needing to possess him. You do not have him when he is with you, but when his soul cannot forget you. Part 2. The male unconscious and his point of surrender. A man does not fall in love. When he decides to, he falls in love. When something inside him gives up without understanding why. Jung called this process the activation of the anima. The moment when the feminine energy within a man awakens, triggered by contact with a woman who reflects what his soul seeks. This moment does not happen with everyone. It happens with the woman who effortlessly makes him feel seen, but not pressured, understood, but not controlled. When the male unconscious is activated, the man experiences a confusing mix of emotions: attraction, fear, vulnerability, and the desire to protect. It is no longer just about physical attraction. Something inside him pushes him to approach her. Even when his mind tells him he shouldn't, he begins to think of her, for no apparent reason, remembers her, in random moments, feels her presence. Even at a distance, that is the first sign of unconscious surrender. When she becomes a constant thought, without having done anything to cause it. Jung said that every man carries within him an inner feminine archetype, the anima, which symbolizes sensitivity, intuition, and emotional connection. When a woman embodies this symbol, even unconsciously, the man feels she completes him. Not because he lacks something, but because she activates a part of him he has long suppressed. That is where his inner conflict begins. His ego, accustomed to control, resists, yet his soul surrenders. And the more he fights this feeling, the stronger the connection becomes, because the unconscious knows no strategies, only resonance. When a woman touches his emotional center, the rational mind loses its power. The fascinating thing is this process has nothing to do with words or romantic gestures. Surrender often happens in silence, in a long look, a calm gesture, a peaceful presence that demands nothing. At that moment, the man feels something different, something that confuses him, but irresistibly attracts him. And even if he pretends indifference, his body betrays him. His pupils dilate, His breathing changes. His tone softens. These are physiological reflexes of the unconscious. Its way of saying, I recognize her. She is the mirror that awakens my soul. This surrender is not weakness, but transformation. When a man meets a woman who reflects his deepest self, he can never love in the same way again. Because after her, everything else seems superficial. A man does not surrender to the one who conquers him, but to the one who mirrors him. Part 3. What truly awakens his emotional bond and what doesn't. Many believe that a man bonds through desire, attention, or because of the intensity of a woman who makes him feel important. But that is only the surface. True emotional attachment, the one Jung described as the union of two unconscious minds, does not arise from desire, but from the deep emotion he feels in her presence. When a woman radiates authenticity, she does not try to impress or prove her worth. She is so connected with her inner being that her energy becomes stable, coherent, and magnetic. The male unconscious perceives this inner coherence as emotional safety, something it rarely finds in the outer world. Then something almost imperceptible happens. His emotional system begins to associate her presence with calm, with home, with comfort. It is not her beauty that truly fascinates him, but how he feels about himself when he is with her. That is the difference between fleeting attraction and deep emotional attachment. When he feels that he can be vulnerable without being judged, that her silence is not a threat, and that he doesn't have to constantly prove his worth to be accepted, his unconscious relaxes, and in that relaxation, attachment arises. The male unconscious does not seek competition, but stability. It seeks an energy that does not challenge him to be more, but invites him to be real. That is why a woman who does not need to justify her love with constant proof becomes his emotional anchor. She does not chase him, yet she does not withdraw emotionally. She is simply there, with a calm presence that touches him deeply and that he cannot forget. Jung said that every true encounter is a recognition of souls. This recognition happens when both drop their masks. When you stop trying to be the perfect woman, and he, without realizing it, lays down his armor. In that moment, an energetic exchange occurs that transcends rational thought. His unconscious begins to store you as part of his own inner experience. Then the subtle signs of attachment appear. He seeks you without reason. He reacts to your distance. He remembers the smallest details, or even dreams of you. It is not magic. It is psychological projection. Your energy has entered his emotional field, and his mind unconsciously builds bridges to keep you present. That is why the greatest mistake is believing that you can create attachment by giving more, offering everything, showing unconditional love. True connection arises from balance. You give without losing yourself. You love without begging. You share without emptying yourself. When you reach this point of balance, you become his strongest emotional symbol. Because a man does not bond with what controls him, nor with what worships him, but with what calms him. When you awaken that peace within him, when his soul feels it can rest with you, you don't need to do anything else. True love is not the one that screams loudly, but the one that remains felt even in silence. Part 4. The paradox of detachment. When you stop seeking him, he begins to seek you. Here lies one of the most powerful and least understood phenomena of love psychology. The more you try to hold on to someone, the more they move away. But when you learn to let go, their energy begins to seek you. Carl Jung explained that the human soul moves in polarities: attraction and repulsion, desire and resistance. When a woman acts out of neediness, she activates in a man the opposite polarity, the impulse to flee. But when her energy becomes free, calm, and detached, the male unconscious perceives something deeply confusing. He loses control over how she makes him feel. Detachment does not mean coldness or indifference, but emotional strength. It is the ability to love without turning love into a strategy to avoid loss. When a woman lets go, she does not stop loving. She only stops begging. And this change is felt by the man immediately, even if he cannot explain it. The male unconscious responds to mystery, not predictability. When he knows you are always available, his mind relaxes and loses interest. But when he senses that you are not always there, that your life does not revolve around him, an emotional tension arises that drives him to seek you. This is not manipulation. It is the psychic nature of desire. Jung said, "Only when something becomes unreachable does the soul begin to truly desire it." When you withdraw calmly, without resentment, without explanations, you create an emotional void, and that very void becomes the mirror of his own longing. Suddenly, he begins to wonder, what is she doing? Why doesn't she reach out? Maybe she doesn't need me anymore. These questions are not rational. They are the result of his unconscious way trying to restore the energetic connection that has been loosened. The irony is, in this silence, he feels you the most. Your absence weighs heavier than your constant presence because he can no longer be sure you are waiting for him. That awakens in him a primal reaction and the urge to reconnect. His mind seeks explanations, but his body and soul know only one thing: he misses you. Emotional detachment has a high frequency. When you are at peace with yourself, not out of pride, but out of self-love, you radiate an energy that neither asks nor demands. This energy is magnetic. The man perceives it as emotional elegance, as quiet strength, and his unconscious feels drawn to it without knowing why. When you stop looking for him, he begins to look for you. When you stop showing him that you need him, he begins to need you. And when you stop trying to conquer him, his soul begins to fear losing you. Detachment does not remove. It restores balance. It gives the connection back its natural power, the energetic balance that was lost when one side gave more than the other. When you reach this balance, he not only returns, he sees you with new eyes, no longer as someone waiting for him, but as someone who inspires him. When you learn to let go, you stop being an option and become his destiny. Part 5. The signs that you already have him emotionally. There is a moment when everything changes, not because he says it, but because his behavior begins to speak for him. Carl Jung explained that the male unconscious often reveals feelings long before the mind comprehends them. When a man is emotionally connected to you, his body, his habits, and his gaze betray him. The first sign is contradiction. He says he wants nothing serious, yet he constantly seeks you out. He claims he is not ready for a relationship, yet cannot bear the thought of losing you. This contradiction is typical of unconscious attachment. His ego tries to stay in control, but his soul has long since surrendered. He is not confused. He is in love and afraid. The second sign is his involuntary attention. He remembers the smallest details. Something you said, a date, a song, one of your sentences. This shows that you have already become part of his emotional reference points. You are no longer a woman. You are a constant presence within him. Even when he tries to distract himself with work or other people, everything leads him back to you. Your energy has become his emotional anchor. The third sign is his need for contact. Even without reason, he texts you just to know how you are, asks trivial things, or reaches out for no particular purpose. This is no coincidence. It is the unconscious trying, in a symbolic way, to maintain the connection. Because when a man is emotionally attached, silence becomes unbearable. He must know that you are still there, even if it's just a simple hello. The fourth sign is the vulnerability he tries to hide. He begins to show you his most human sides, fears, doubts, insecurities. Sometimes he gets angry at himself because he doesn't understand his feelings. Yet, precisely at this point, the emotional bond solidifies, when he is no longer afraid to be seen, because his mask no longer makes sense in your presence. The fifth sign is subtle jealousy. Even if he doesn't admit it, you sense something bothers him when other men appreciate you. Not because he wants to possess you, but because he already perceives you, on an unconscious level, as his emotional symbol. This reaction is not a rational process, but an instinctive protective impulse that appears when he feels he could lose something valuable. And finally, the deepest sign. His gaze changes. He no longer sees you with mere desire, but with recognition. This silent look, that lingers a moment longer, is the language of the soul that says, "You are already within me." At that moment, you are no longer an experience, but a mirror. His unconscious has woven you into his emotional story. Even if he denies it, a part of him already belongs to you. This does not mean that he is ready to admit it or commit. Often, a man needs time to accept the depth of his feelings, but the truth is there. His soul has surrendered, even if his mind still resists, and you will know it without words. The way he looks at you, seeks you, or avoids you, says more than any promise. The unconscious cannot lie. When a man has absorbed you into himself, silence becomes a confession. He doesn't say it, but his soul has already chosen you. Part 6. How to keep his bond without losing yourself. Here is where many women make their biggest mistake. As soon as they feel that a man is emotionally involved, they try to secure that love, seeking confirmation, words, promises. Yet paradoxically, that very effort destroys the magic. Jung said that true love arises in the balance between the I and the you, between the desire for connection and the need for individuality. When one dissolves into the other, the bond becomes dependence, not relationship. That is why your true power, once you already have him emotionally, lies in not trying to hold him. It sounds contradictory, but the unconscious male bond grows through mystery, through the sense that he can never fully possess you. When a man feels that he could lose you, his emotional energy stays awake and active. This is not about manipulation, but about keeping alive the emotional tension that makes him want to keep winning. You don't give everything even when he is opened up. Total surrender without balance leads to saturation. The male unconscious stops seeking what it already owns. Therefore, keep your own space, your routines, and passions that don't revolve around him. When he sees that you live with purpose, that you radiate authenticity, his unconscious feels both admiration and desire. This mix is irresistible. It keeps him emotionally bound without feeling trapped. The second key rule: do not react out of lack. If he pulls back a little, don't chase him. The male unconscious needs space to process what it feels. When you respect his silence without punishing him or demanding explanations, you give him a rare emotional experience. That of a woman who does not need to control him to feel safe. This energy attracts him because it embodies emotional maturity. The third rule: be a mirror, not a refuge. Don't try to heal him or save him from his wounds. Every man must face his own shadows. Your task is not to rescue him, but to show him who he can become. When your presence confronts him with his potential instead of his pain, his unconscious begins to associate you with growth rather than suffering. This creates a deeper bond than any declaration of love. The fourth rule: maintain your feminine energy without losing your inner balance. Gentleness, empathy, and intuition are magnetic forces, but they must arise from balance, not from self-denial. A woman who rests in herself radiates a calm that disarms a man. She does not need to fight, beg, or explain. She simply is, and this, Jung said, is what awakens in the male unconscious the sense of having found something whole. Remember, the goal is not to conquer his mind but to touch his soul, and the soul responds only to authenticity. When you let your light shine without depending on his, he feels that your love does not limit him but elevates him. Thus, the connection remains alive without you losing yourself. Not through struggle, but through serenity. Not through need, but through the natural attraction of a woman who knows her worth. Don't hold him, shine, and he will know where he belongs. Conclusion: the love chosen by the soul. When a man is willing to risk his peace, his logic, or even his pride for a woman, it is not because he has lost control, but because his unconscious has recognized something that his mind cannot explain. Jung called it a symbolic coincidence, a resonance between two souls that meet beyond reason. It is neither obsession nor dependency, but the experience of recognizing oneself in another. The feeling that the soul has found a missing piece. But here lies the secret. This kind of love cannot survive through fear or dependence. When the bond arises from the unconscious, it must mature through consciousness. What begins as deep attraction, projection, or fascination must evolve into conscious love. A love in which both choose each other not out of need but out of freedom. The woman who inspires this love is neither the one who gives herself up completely nor the one who hides behind masks. She is the one who has learned to know herself, to integrate her own shadow, and to love without losing her individuality. Jung said that the deepest relationship is not between two finished people, but between two beings who help each other become whole. That is the essence of love that transcends desire. Two souls that do not consume each other, but grow together. Therefore, when he says does, or remains silent, and you feel confused, seek the answer not in his words, but in his energy. The unconscious speaks in gestures, in pauses, in small contradictions that reveal what the ego cannot admit. If he protects you, cares, tries to understand you, even without knowing how, then he is already more deeply connected than he wants to admit. He may not say it, because his mind still fears losing control, but his soul has already chosen. And you need to know only one thing. You do not need to prove your worth to be loved. True love is not fought for. It reveals itself when both souls are ready to meet without fear. It's not about making him love you. It's about allowing love to happen when you are at peace, when you vibrate from that inner calm. You become a mirror in which he can also see himself without a mask. Then love stops being a game of strategies and becomes a transformation, a shared journey of awakening, a silent movement between two unconscious minds slowly becoming aware. True love does not bind you, it frees you. It does not fill you, it awakens you. And this is the love Jung would call destiny, the one that does not arise from need, but from the soul.